I've got a coffee. I've got a stack of 20-something books. That must mean it's wrap-up time. Hi, I'm Sophie and this is What's So Read Next. If you are new here, please stick around. I post bookish content 3 times a week, 1 vlog and 2 other videos, whether that's more in-depth reviews, specific book vlogs, or just me chatting about books. This is a me chatting about books video because it's wrap-up. Next month I'm actually going to be changing my wrap-ups a little bit, which I will explain at the end of the video. In February I read a total of 21 books and there was 1 book that I DNF'd. 2 of these books that I read were in audio format and I am now subscribed to Scribd, so if you would like to get a month free in exchange for you using my link, I also get a month free. I will leave a link down in the description box. In February I read 8,439 pages, which is an average of 301 pages per day. This is not representative of every single day because some days I read hardly anything and other days I read surplus of 700 pages, so we've balanced out to 301 pages per day, and my average rating was 3.45 stars, so we're a little bit lower on my average compared to January, which was about 3.65, but I read, I would say, 3 books this month that I have not been able to stop thinking about. So in terms of a good reading month, I do think this is a better month. I will start this wrap up with my DNF, and that was Hidden Bodies by Caroline Katniss. I got about 160 pages into this. It was the day before A Court of Silver Flames came out and I just had zero interest in this book. I wasn't that bothered on You, which is the first book in the series, but I sort of carried on through with it. But this one I just couldn't. I had no interest. It was just such a low intrigue that I just didn't care. I have since found it on Scribd and Santino Fontana narrates it, so I may listen to it, like pick up where I left off and listen to it, because I do really like his voice. I don't know what he's like as an audiobook narrator, but I like his voice and I like him as an actor. My first book of February was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. Henry and Luke are probably 2 of my favourite characters ever. I was not first on Addie, but I did really enjoy this book. If you don't know what it's about, although I'm sure you do because I feel like I'm one of the last people to read this, Addie makes a deal with the devil that she has freedom, and with that freedom it means she will never die. But the devil only gives what people ask for. As a result, Addie can no longer be remembered by people. As soon as they walk out of her life or go to sleep, that's it, she has been forgotten. Her parents don't remember her, her lovers don't remember her, until one day she meets Henry in a bookshop and he does remember her. I wept my little heart out, and when I was trying to explain this to Jack, like sort of half an hour after I read this, I started crying again. I really liked it. I can see why people thought the ending fell flat, but I didn't. I really liked this and I am looking forward to rereading this at some point. I just really loved this. Next up was Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse by Riordan. This is the 3rd book in the Percy Jackson series and I gave this 3 stars. I read this as part of Jodie from Vanilla Moon's readathon at the start of February, which means I just sat and read it on the sofa in one sitting. In this instalment, Annabeth has been taken and Percy has to team up with some new friends that he's made to try and get her back. I did expect to read another Percy Jackson book this month and I just didn't get to one, but they are really short books. I believe this is only about 300 or so pages. Yeah, pretty much 300 pages, so even the last 2 in the series aren't massive, so I expect to read at least 1 in March, although my March TBR is quite long. So we'll see if I get to it, and I am really enjoying this series. The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley is a second-hand book to me. You can see it's quite tatty on the side. This was given to me in 2019 by Jack's mum when she finished with it and she absolutely loved it and knows I enjoy a good thriller. However, I feel like I say this all the time, but I read so many thrillers in 2016, 2017 that they're just so predictable now that I kind of guess a lot of what's happening. This book is about a group of university friends who they've been friends for best part of 20 years now. They go away for New Year's to a remote estate in Scotland, and on New Year's Day one of them is dead. You're chopping and changing between two different times. You've got the lead up to the event and then after the event, and at the end you find out who's done it. Most of the people in the party do have a motive, and I pretty much guessed about halfway through who'd done it, so this got 3 stars because whilst I enjoyed it and I was intrigued, it just wasn't different enough for me as a thriller to get anything higher than that. I don't know whether it's because I was in a readathon, I'd already smashed out 2 books and I wanted a quick book, but when I picked up Stardust by Neil Gaiman, I didn't love this. It's only about 200 pages, so it's a nice short read, but I came out at the end of it and gave it 2 stars. I just didn't love it. I think if I was in a better frame of mind when I was reading it and I wasn't trying to read it quite so quickly to get through it for a readathon, I might have enjoyed it a bit more. But I was disappointed because I love the film and this is also my first Neil Gaiman book. I am hoping to read Good Omens, which is obviously written alongside Terry Pratchett. It's quite different to the film, and I think if you go into it expecting the film, you're going to be disappointed. And even though I knew it was going to be different to the film, I was still holding on to that, oh, I need the film, and it made me want to watch the film. I haven't watched it again, but maybe I'll get to that at some point in the next few weeks. I feel like I've gone slightly out of order here because I'm sure I read a graphic novel at some point during this readathon, but then I know this next book was like I started during the readathon but didn't finish, so Goodreads has confused me. But the next book I read, I think possibly, was The Man Who Didn't Call by Rosie Walsh. Again, another second-hand book to me. This was on my wish list for a really long time, and when my mum was going through it around my birthday in October, she said, take that off your wish list, I've got a copy of it, you can have it. I don't even know if she read this or whether somebody gave it to her. I really enjoyed this book. This is about a girl called Sarah who meets a man called Eddie on the anniversary of a really horrible day in her memory. They spend 7 days together, have the best time, fall in love over those 7 days, and then he goes on holiday and says, I will ring you when I get back. She's like, oh, I'll meet you at the airport, it'd be really lovely. And then he doesn't, and she doesn't know why, and she's trying to get in touch with people. She kind of stalks him, and then she finds out the exact reason that he didn't call, and I cried. It was so lovely. I gave this 4 stars. I really liked this, and it was a really hard story, but it was a really nice sort of like redemption story. Okay, I lied, I don't think I read a graphic novel next. I think I read this next. Don't You Forget About Me by Valerie McFarlane. This was another 4-starer for me. This is about Georgina, who has got a horrible boyfriend, a horrible job, and on the same day she's fired from her job through no fault of her own really, and she finds her boyfriend in bed with his secretary. So she goes, you know what, I've had enough, I need to find something better. And as a favour to her brother-in-law, she ends up working sort of like a one-off job, and it's a funeral wake in a pub that is yet to open, and she really impresses the manager and ends up getting a full-time job there. However, her first boyfriend is co-owner, and she ends up working with her ex-boyfriend, who doesn't remember who she is in the slightest. This was funny, this was romantic, but it didn't stray from the hard-hitting stuff. There was a really difficult scene in this. I won't say it now, but I will put a trigger warning in the description because it is difficult, and it's a difficult scene to read. But I did really enjoy this, and I can't wait to read more of Valerie McFarlane's work. The weekend after Jodie's readathon was Queer No Fear, which Tasmin and Molly hosted. So this was a 2-day event to read as much queer literature as you could. And the first book I read as part of that was Only Mostly Devastated by Sophie Gonzalez. This is a Grease retelling, but instead of Sandy and Danny, it is between 2 boys who met at a lake over summer, but instead of going their separate ways, both boys end up going to the same school, but one of the boys isn't out yet. So it is a story of coming out, it's a story of love, it's a story of friendship, but most importantly, it's a Grease retelling, and that's really fun. Sophie Gonzalez does have another book coming out this month, which is called Perfect on Paper, which has more queer rep in it, and I am looking forward to getting to that later in the month. And I gave Only Mostly Devastated 3 stars. A 4-star read as part of Queer No Fear was the Falling in Love montage. This is a sapphic romance between a girl who is just finished her, it's Irish and I don't know what the equivalent is, but essentially finished her A-levels and is about to go off to Oxford University following in her mum's footsteps, and her arch nemesis's cousin, Saoirse, who is about to go off to Oxford, doesn't want to get into another relationship, but she falls for Ruby, and Ruby loves a rom-com, so they decide to spend the summer doing all the fun things that you get in a rom-com montage, going to a fun fair, going on a pedalo, having a movie marathon. So they do all of those things, but they know that there's a finite date and at the end they will go their separate ways. But can you do all those things and not fall in love? I really enjoyed this. It was cute, it was fluffy, I really liked it. I then decided to start my Grishaverse read. I have never read anything in the Grishaverse, but I wanted to read all the books before the Netflix show comes out, which looks incredible. The trailer came out a few days ago and I can't wait to watch it. Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. The first 150 pages was so boring. If it was 150 pages that I'd read of a 600-page book, it would have gone down, it would have been a DNF, not interested. However, at that point I was halfway through, I really wanted to get to it and I thought hopefully the series will pick up. And then I really enjoyed it from that point on. When there started to be action, less setup, I was hooked. I'm sure you all know what this is about, but if you don't, Alina doesn't think she's got any powers. However, when she enters the fold, she discovers that she does and that she's Grisha. She has managed to hide these powers from herself for about like 15 years or something, and when it's discovered that she has these powers, the Darkling takes her under his wing. Now the Darkling changes every 100 years or so, but this Darkling is different. He wants to break down this unsea, or this dark shadowy fold, and combine the two worlds together again. The only way he can do this is by combining his dark power with Alina's light power. Like I say, the first 150 pages was so boring, I don't even know how to explain how dull they were, but when it picked up, it really picked up, and I ended up giving this 3 stars. I then read Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. This is the story of Amira, who is apprehended at a supermarket for kidnapping a child, but this is a child that she is actually babysitting for. After all the mix-ups, her employer Alex says, you know what, we're going to do something about this. I'm going to try and learn how to be a better ally. This was longlisted for the 2020 Booker Prize and I did really enjoy it. I ended up giving this 3 stars because I just didn't gel with the characters very well. After the initial apprehension of Amira, I just feel like the plot didn't develop quite as far as I'd have liked it to. I feel like it could have done with an extra 50 pages at the end. Like, obviously it is a short read, but I feel like an extra 50 pages at the end would have been really nice to round things off properly and give things a really solid ending. I've just worked out where my confusion was with the graphic novel that I read, and that is because there was a second readathon that Jodie did, that she did alongside Sabine from Sabine's Book Nook. That's when I read the graphic novel. But anyway, the next book was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I've heard great things about the Brown Sisters trilogy. I say trilogy, but Actual Age of Eve Brown is not out yet. It is coming out next week and I cannot wait to read it. But yeah, I'd heard great things and I really wanted to read them. This was cheap on Amazon, so I picked this up. And this is the story of Chloe, who suffers from a chronic illness, but she decides she wants to live her life. So she moves out from the family home, she gets a flat, and she writes a list of all the things she wants to achieve. And she thinks that one of the people who lives in her building can help with this. Red has tattoos, he drives a motorbike, and he seems like this dangerous guy that's going to really help her out. What she doesn't expect is to fall in love with him, and it's just really lovely. It's really heartwarming. You are introduced to the other 2 sisters in this book, but you don't see a lot of them, and I think that must be a theme of the books, that you know they're there but you don't spend a lot of time with them. But I gave this 4 stars and I really liked it. The graphic novel I read this month was The Sad Ghost Club by Leigh Meddings. This is a graphic novel about mental health and anxiety and depression. The subtitle is Find Your Kindred Spirits, and that's exactly what this sad ghost does. He goes to a party because he wants to be brave. I say he, I think it's a he. I don't think it matters, it's a ghost, but meets somebody else who is also in the same situation as him, and it's them discussing their lives, and it's just really sweet. This was a quick read with really lovely artwork, so yeah, lovely, and I gave this 4 stars. I then read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I will be honest, I do not get the hype for this. I gave this 3 stars and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't what I was expecting, and I think that's the problem. If I go into a book expecting something and I don't get it, I'm always disappointed. I picked this up for a book club, which I then didn't really take part in. I did like the writing, although I didn't necessarily like the interview style of this book. I just wasn't expecting it, and I didn't necessarily gel with it. I wasn't expecting so much backstory as well. Obviously you needed some backstory, but the whole book was backstory, and I wanted more of the where are they now, which I just didn't get. It kind of felt like a cop-out as well. I don't know how to say this without spoiling it, although it has been out for a while. It kind of had How I Met Your Mother vibes, and it was just a disappointing end as well. So yeah, 3 stars. I will read more of Taylor Jenkins Reid's work, but I didn't love this, although I do think it will work really well as a TV show, which they are doing. I believe Amazon have bought the rights and are developing a TV show, so I will watch that when it comes out. Hidden Bodies, which I've already said I DNF'd, was the next book, and then after that I moved on to what was my most anticipated read of the month, possibly even the most anticipated book of the year, until I read something else this month. But that book was A Court of Silver Flames. I have done a full reading vlog about this where I've discussed it. I say at length, it wasn't that lengthy, but I will link that up here so you can see what I really thought of it. But I gave this 5 stars, although I still preferred Akamath and Akawar over this. I also don't like that it's Akosf, not Akasaf. I really liked Nesta's development. I liked seeing more of Cassian. I would have liked to have seen more of the Inner Circle. I'd have liked to known a bit more about Elaine. I was more interested in the Elaine, Asriel and Lucian love triangle before picking up this book, and that's what I really wanted next, not Nesta and Cassian. But I did enjoy this. It also wasn't as smutty as I was expecting. Sarah J Maas said that this is the smuttiest book she's ever written and her family can't read it. It wasn't that bad, to be honest. It kicked off quite quickly, but it wasn't that bad. There is some good mental health rep in this, especially in terms of trauma and PTSD, but it was also very predictable. I still gave it 5 stars because I did really enjoy it. I was really interested in it, and by the time I plugged it into Callpile, it still came out as 5 stars. It just didn't quite live up to the hype for me as much as I wanted it to, but I still really enjoyed it. Okay, I've missed a book, but it was an audio book that I only gave 2 stars, so I will quickly talk about it, and that is the Quantum Weirdness of the Almost Kiss. I actually started this in January. It took me the best part of a month to listen to it. I think that shows that I wasn't that interested. If I really wanted to know what happened next, I would have kept listening to it, and I think I ended up taking kind of like a 2-week break where I just didn't listen to it, and then I came back to it and I was like, oh, I only had 4 chapters left. I really should have finished it. That's by Amy Noel Parks. It got 2 stars, and it is the story of 2 boys who both like the same nerdy girl. It was very YA. I can't even remember the ins and outs of it. I just didn't love it. I didn't hate it enough to stop listening to it altogether. It wasn't terrible. Not my favourite book. After A Court of Silver Flames, I moved on to the next Brown Sisters book, and that was Take a Hint, Dani Brown. Another really lovely book. This is a fake dating trope book, which I love, and this book follows the middle Brown sister, Dani. During a fire alarm, Zafir rescues Dani from a lift, and they go viral. And they end up working together to promote Zafir's charity. It's just a lovely story. It's another smutty tale from Talia Hibbert, and I did come out of this one giving it 5 stars. Dani as a sister is great. She's so independent and I love her. And Zafir is different to a lot of men in contemporary romance. He's very in touch with his feelings on the inside, but obviously doesn't like that show on the outside that often. And I just really, really liked it, and I can't wait for Eve Brown next week. Literally, when it arrives, I will finish whatever book I'm on and move straight on to Eve Brown because I cannot wait. The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp was a 3-star read for me. This is the story of Nora, who gets caught up in a bank robbery gone wrong, and the only way she can get out of it is by letting everybody know her past. Nora's mother was a con artist, so Nora spent a good 4 or 5 years of her life getting involved in the con. At the age of 12 she manages to get out, but from then on she practically needs witness protection. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't my favourite. I didn't love the writing style, and I feel like the story could have been executed a little better. This is in film development with Millie Bobby Brown playing Nora. I will probably watch it, and I am interested to see how they're going to make Nora younger. You go back as far as sort of age 8, 10 years before the book is set. 10 years as an adult is easy to roll the years back a bit. It's not so easy when you've got an 18-year-old and you're trying to make them look 8. So I'll be interested to see how they do that. I then finished another audiobook, which I think I finished in about 3 days. I was listening to it while I was doing laundry and things like that. And that is The Worst Best Man. This is an enemies to lovers tale where the opening you learn about Lena getting married, but then she is stood up on her wedding day and she has been led to believe that her groom's best man and little brother is to blame. He has talked his brother out of getting married and so they split. 3 years down the line, Lena is a successful wedding planner and is in the running to be a wedding planner for a hotel. She then finds herself working alongside the ex-best man in the world's most intense interview process, and they get together and it's just really lovely. A little bit smutty but not massively, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Okay, we're in the home straight now. I've got 3 books left. 2 of them are a 5-star and 1 of them was definitely not a 5-star. From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout is probably my favourite book of the year. It's in my top 3 for sure. I loved this. The first sort of couple of 100 pages were quite slow with world building, but in this book we meet Poppy. She is the maiden, she has been chosen by the gods, and for that she must always wear a white veil. She can't do anything, she can't love, she can't have friendships. She's in the care of the Duke and Duchess, but Poppy has never been one to follow the rules. Her parents were killed at a young age and her brother has ascended, which usually only happens to a second child, but as Poppy is the second child and was chosen, her brother was allowed to go through the ascension in her place. It's meant to be a thing that makes you so worthy, but Poppy ends up meeting Hawke on one of her escapes from the castle. Poppy regularly watches Hawke train, he is a guard, and she's just intrigued by him. However, when one of her personal guards dies, Hawke takes his place and they end up falling in love, and Poppy really grows. You learn that she knows how to fight. There's a lot of deception going on, and I can't spoil the book because I want you all to read it, and you just need to read it. One of my favourite books of the year so far, and I already can't wait to reread it. I then had 1 book left on my TBR for the month, but I couldn't leave From Blood and Ash and not read the sequel. So with 2 days to go, I added a whopping 900 pages to my February TBR. I can't go too much into detail of A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer L. Armentrout because it would spoil the end of From Blood and Ash, and then it is a direct sequel. It literally continues straight on. There's not even like a beat. It is straight in. So I'm glad I picked it up next. I don't think I can wait until April for the next book. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I really enjoyed it. Both the books in the Blood and Ash series so far have got 5 stars for me, and I am expecting incredible things from the rest of the series. I wish I'd have just left it at that because I'd have ended February on a high, but instead I read Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo and I did not enjoy it at all. I read this in a 24-hour reading vlog, which I will link up here, and I gave it 2 stars. I didn't enjoy it, and if I wasn't reading all of the Grishaverse books, I'd have DNF'd it. I just hated it. I had no interest. It didn't get a 1 star because I still liked some points of it, but I absolutely flew through it because I skim read it. I only cared about the Darkling, and even then I didn't care about that much. Nothing happened until the last 30 pages and it was tosh, to be honest. I did it. I talked about all the books that I read in February, which was a lot. Wasn't as many as January, but I feel like I read some incredible books this month and I'm looking forward to seeing how I do in March. Now, I said at the start of the video that I'm going to be changing my wrap-ups very slightly at the end of the month from now on because I am doing weekly vlogs. Surprise! This is my reveal of doing weekly vlogs that will be going up every Wednesday. You will see what I'm reading and what I'm thinking about whilst I'm reading. However, these are kind of for me to see what I've read, what my stats are each month, and I will literally share my top 3 books of the month, all my stats, a disappointing book, those kind of things. This is my last like super duper long wrap up. I know that some people love watching wrap ups and some people really don't. So I'm trying to appeal to the masses. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Maybe subscribe if you want to stick around, and I will see you in the next one.